Hey, what's up? It's the Pangolin here, back with another video, and let's just skip all the formalities. No intro, really. Let's just get straight into it. You know why we're here. Arcane. Let's go. To start off, I just want to say, going into this season, this act, whatever, I just want to say the two things I was hoping we wouldn't get in Arcane are time travel and a multiverse. Because those things tend to add a bunch of unnecessary holes to stories that could have been avoided. But of course, execution is everything. So I'm not saying that those things are impossible to do well, but it's really hard, especially when they're introduced so late in the story. Thankfully though, I don't think this is the worst inclusion of it I've seen. It had potential to get a little messy, but because they introduced it so late in the story, it simultaneously was too rushed, but also didn't have enough time to get as messy as it could have. So that is what it was. But I just want to say the entire episode about a separate timeline, episode 7, is kind of wild. Given the limited time we had, at least for me personally, it felt like the show was running with constricted time, and it led to some letdowns in terms of character motivation and development. So having an entire episode in this separate, I guess, ideal timeline, even though Vi's dead in that timeline, it's kind of wild because you're really losing a lot of time and forcing a lot of things to get wrapped up in episodes 8 and 9. But I get they had to get to Echo's device somehow. I don't play League or anything, but I know that he had some time travel ability in that game. So I know they had to incorporate that somehow. That episode though, in isolation, despite what I just said, in isolation, that's one of the best episodes in the show. It's amazing. Having episode 6 and episode 7, like those two episodes back to back, are some of the strongest things the show's had to offer overall. Jumping around though, Caitlyn and Vi just did not hit, bro. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, it didn't hit. It was just fan servicey as hell. I know this was the build up of 2 seasons. They were gonna get together no matter what, but just the timing was terrible, and it gave such tonal whiplash with Vi's sister literally trying to off herself at the same time that this is happening. It was just not the right timing, bro. Read the room. It didn't hit right, especially given the things that happened in the season. I do think it was well written that Caitlyn was trying to explain herself, saying she was seeing the Maddie girl, and Vi was like, yeah, I don't care, bro. I thought that was an interesting dynamic to have, even though kind of just a cop out to not really have to go through all that reconciliation, which the characters kind of needed after the seasons had them jumping around so much. But I'm not mad about that either. I just think the timing of it itself wasn't the best, but you know, that's what fans wanted. I know the shippers at the wazoo for those two, so I'm glad they got it. I will say though, I think Loris's death, Loris, you know, the big burly guy that was hanging out with Vi the whole season or parts of the season, I just wish his death hit harder. I just think we didn't get to know him well enough. Maybe he's a lead character that everyone knows, I don't know. But for just a show watcher only, he just pops up here and there. He barely spoke. He just had little cameos, really. So when he died, I know that was supposed to mean a lot to Vi. But to me, watching it, I was like, he seems cool, but we just didn't get enough of him, so it's kind of unfortunate. Getting to the really good stuff, though, the entire sequence from Mbessa, even before that, the war and the fight they were having outside was dope too. But as soon as like everything hits the fan, Caitlyn's down, everyone gets captured, and Mbessa walks up the stairs, the music starts hitting, and then you see Caitlyn's being held back, and then you see the Maddie betrayal, which, you know, I didn't really care for her, so it didn't really mean that much to me. But it was still cool seeing, okay, this girl who really seemed ineffective for the most part was actually betraying her. I thought that was still cool. Some people could say maybe it was not set up as much, but I think they did a decent job. But yeah, getting back to it, that entire sequence, and then you get the Jinx and Echo entrance, and then you also get, before that, you get Mel coming in. She saves Caitlyn. Bing, bang, boom. Maddie dies. Then you see Jinx and Echo come in the ship. And then you get the Caitlyn and Mel 2v1 versus Mbessa. Mbessa is the GOAT. I don't care. She may be evil, the master manipulator of the season, even though somehow she's getting manipulated by Victor, which I will get into that doesn't really add up for me. But all of that added together, and then you get the Jinx, Echo, and Vi versus Vander, like all of that going on at the same time. That was one of the best sequences of the entire show. I really felt the tension the hype. I was on the edge of my seat during that sequence. It hit hard. But yeah, speaking of Mbessa and her motivations, I don't really understand why she would go along with Victor now, knowing that like all her soldiers just become mindless robots basically. Victor is really the one who has control of everything, not her. It's just going to be her and a bunch of mindless robots going to fight the Black Rose, I guess. But then if for her, family is everything, quote unquote, which I guess is cap, maybe it's ambitions, everything. But it just doesn't make sense. She would just want to live in a world where it's just her and a bunch of mindless robots, and then Victor could do whatever he wants to her at that point. I don't know if that really lines up with their character up until that point, but she's shown to be so smart and then kind of just stumbles the last hurdle. Doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't even matter to me because she went crazy in that 2v1, so that was hype. And in terms of that final fight too, I don't quite understand why Echo wasn't possessed. Like when Victor is sending down these little strings that possess everyone, Echo just like dodges it somehow and he just is able to save the day, which is dope. Echo's probably the best character of the season, despite not even being in it that much, to be honest, but he really clutched up. His entire sequence was super dope. The time travel to try to, going back in time to try to really defeat Victor, and you see Jace sitting there in the same position he was in the flash forward, and Echo trying to get to him. That was super dope. I actually really liked that. But I just don't get why he wasn't possessed. Maybe you can explain that to me in the comments. My only guess is that he was knocked out when it happened, so maybe he didn't register him as like a living being in the vicinity. I don't know. I'm kind of reaching to make it work, but getting to something that I'm super hyped about, I called it with Victor. If you see my previous videos, I was saying since Act 1, my video in Act 1, that Victor, when he went and started his cult, really reminded me of the sorcerer that saved Jace's life when he was a kid. And I was tying those two together, and lo and behold, it was a whole time loop thing where that sorcerer was actually Victor, who went back to save Jace, so because Jace is the only one in all the infinite timelines that showed Victor the ending he needed to see in order for them to put an end to it together. So just go back and watch those videos if you don't believe me. I called it, and I'm hype about that, even if I have some issues with Victor and Jace's ending. And I just want to get onto that now, because I saw something on Reddit I completely agree with. Victor and Jace's ending being that Victor couldn't predict that the world he envisioned would be lifeless seems far-fetched, considering he's portrayed to have another level of understanding compared to the mere mortals. Like he's some genius who just went into a different plane of existence and he really understands everything. I don't understand how someone on that level can't predict that removing emotion from all humans is going to end up in the world that we see Jace ended up in. That seems like a bit of a reach to me, that's really the big thing that the entire outcome of the season hinges on. That's a bit of a miss for me, I can't lie, but overall I'm so glad I called that. Even though I just said that was the most important ending in terms of the outcome of the world, really the more important ending to me is Jinx and Vi's ending, especially with Vander and all that, because that's what really started the show off in season 1. Jinx and Vi being the really two core characters of the story and their connection, and their ending for me is like the emotional core of the show. So I think if they nailed that, I didn't really care about what was going on with Victor and Jace. I cared, of course, but like they could fumble that a little bit. But if they nail Jinx and Vi, then I'm like, okay, that smashes that out of the park for me. And personally, it just didn't quite work for me, I have to be honest. For me, there's two ways you can interpret Jinx's ending: her dying or her just killing Vander and leaving Piltover. And I have reactions for both. Like, I think if she died, the death is just so unnecessary. Vi, who I know is shown not to be the strongest in terms of intelligence in the show, but she has a lot of survival savvy. And for her just to be selling so unnecessarily, like just sitting there with Vander's body or Warwick or whatever, and they just faked out this dude coming back like 25 times this season. Clearly it's not working out, but she just wants to stay there for a long time. Like, she had a lot of time to get away from his body, and they just didn't let her go, and then Jinx had to go save her. It was just, for me, that was just so unnecessary, like very forced. I didn't mind if Jinx died. Like I said in, I think, my Act 1 video, to me the show was always going to end with one of Jinx Caitlyn and Vi dying, maybe multiple, but at least one of them dying to solve this. And I don't mind a tragic ending, but come on, bro. If that was the way Jinx went out, it didn't work. But unless, of course, if it was a fake out and she escaped, that's a bit of a different ending. But a fake out for what's meant to be the finale of this story is also not my favorite. I think a fake out works if there's more story to tell. And of course, there's maybe more story to tell with the Arcane world as a whole, Runeterra, whatever. But for them, they said this is the final chapter. For all intents and purposes, this is the final chapter. A fake out just doesn't really nail it in the way I would hope it would. Because then in those future stories, you have to go, if you see Jinx somewhere, you're like, oh yeah, she actually made it out, or whatever. This is based on this interpretation that you kind of slipped in there at the end with these little scenes. Which of course, there's hints at the end of her being alive, like Caitlyn looking at the blueprints of where she might be, and the airship flying away with the glitch effects. That's dope. I think that's definitely hinting at something. But I just think, overall, I think Jinx and Vi just needed more time in the third act, especially given that they were the two most central characters in season 1. And the way it ended up is just slightly unsatisfying, I have to be honest. You know, the Shimmer Spammer, his daughter got healed, so I guess he really gets the only W of the whole season. Good for him. Overall, though, with all the issues that I had, I don't even think Arcane needs to be that much longer. Like I said last week, I think some people was thinking, oh, we needed 3 seasons to really nail this. 3 seasons would have been nice, but that would have been kind of overkill in my opinion. Even just 10 episodes or hour-long episodes for what we are having right now, which is what, like 40 minutes. I think the finale is 50 minutes. Even hour-long episodes for this season could have elevated the show so much, in my opinion. The main persisting issue of the season are the character motivations for me. I feel like they jump around a bit too much without having the proper setup or explanation. And then on top of that, for the ending, the two main things introducing us to this world, the Jinx and Vi dynamic, and then the Piltover and Zaun conflict, both had unsatisfying conclusions in my opinion. Like, Jinx and Vi already went into that, and then Piltover and Zaun, you kind of see them come together for this big fight for the fate of the world, really. But then in the end, we see Savika join the council, and there's still more to go. I guess it's supposed to be a step in the right direction. And I don't need that necessarily to be solved right then and there. I think even a step in the right direction is cool. But if you're not going to really have a solid conclusion to Jinx and Vi, then you want that at least to be solid, or have that be solid and then have the other one not be solid. We need something solid. Something. And for me, on multiple fronts, the ending just wasn't solid. Piltover and Zaun wasn't solid. Jinx and Vi wasn't solid. And then Jace and Victor, I like the way they went out. That was cool. Like, they're partners for life, whatever. But just like I explained before, the whole motivation for Victor just didn't really hit. To me, though, there's still so much good this season. I think the flaws aren't enough to ruin the show as a whole. Without a doubt, Arcane is still a great piece of media. And I also want to defend the show a bit, because I think some League fans are also disappointed from a canon standpoint, like the lore of League and what the characters are like in the game. And I understand that. That's definitely fair, but I think that was never what the show was meant to be. I don't think they ever intended the show to be like one-to-one with the canon, so it feels harsh to judge them from that point of view. I think it just proved tough to wrap up what they said was the final chapter of the story, while also trying to hint at future storylines in this world with the time that they had. Let me know though if you disagree. I'm always down to hear different perspectives, and I know I'm just forgetting stuff, but I'm recording it a couple days after watching, just so my takes aren't too rash like they might have been right as I finished the show. Maybe in a few years, whenever they're going to release future shows in this world, I'll do an Arcane retrospective and look at the show as a whole again. I just can't believe it's over though. Isn't that wild? We waited 3 years for season 2 and it's actually over. The show finished in 2 seasons, wrapped it up. May not be with a bow on top, but I'm impressed overall. I'm still happy to see that the show come to an end. And I'm happy overall the level was solid. So thanks for watching, especially if you made it this far. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on season 2, the ending, and now having seen the ending, your thoughts on Arcane as a whole. And if you have even 5 seconds to spare, it'd help a lot if you liked, subscribed, and all that other good stuff. There should be a new video out same time next week. See ya.